screen and hear us. All right. So like Brent said, we've been doing this for several years. It started with a small group of us actually right down the street in the state library and on the top floor talking projects. At the time, the oil spill had just happened. I think 2011 was the year, and we knew that the slug of work and the increase in the amount of projects the agency let was going to ramp up. In order to facilitate the increased load in bid packages, we started doing some outreach to industry, and we met with Scott Kirkpatrick and Coast Builders, and we realized that Coastal Day was a perfect opportunity. But you kind of see there, any meeting has a purpose, and man, when you can combine all of these things into a single meeting as your purpose, you're doing quite well. But once again, all of these things I think we've accomplished over the years in any given year. Networking, feedback. We've had some great conversations. We've improved some of our bid packages based on the feedback we've received. Technical discussions. We've brought in not just contractors into this conversation, but some of the engineers and scientists and other people who work in permitting and planning into these conversations as well. We continue to improve every year. It's not really just industry day anymore. It's industry week now. So most of you have probably been around the Capitol area and the CPRA building and participated in some of these events. I see a few familiar faces there. But at the end of the day, these are some of the things that have happened. Of course, we had the networking event earlier where we were linking businesses together. It was an opportunity for new businesses, small businesses to team up or meet and sit down face to face with some of the businesses who do work in this sector, not necessarily just for CPRA, but in the coastal and water resources sector. At 1 p.m., which just ended, the governor did his annual coastal briefing. And then following that, there was some outreach to legislators. Of course, you're here at the CPRA Coastal Construction Project Forecast. And then right after this, we'll go have a good time and eat some bald crawfish at the reception, which is sponsored by Coast Builders and a CRCL and MRD. 2 p.m., very similar to this meeting, same format. We'll have our partner-led coastal construction project. So one of the things we've started doing is a lot of the funds that come through our agency, other entities are doing the letting and bidding of those projects, levee districts, parishes, etc. So tomorrow at 2 p.m., there is a virtual version of that. And then, of course, all week starting tomorrow at lunchtime, we'll have a daily webinar of various topics. There's a QR code for the link. If you don't know what a QR code is, talk to Jacques. He may be able to help you. But at the end of the day, these are on our website. They're on our Facebook page. If you have issues, let us know, get into them. But there'll be a Zoom meeting for the 2 p.m. partner-led construction forecast. And then looking at the several webinars starting Tuesday. This one's actually at lunch to talk contract and overview. These are for people who may not be familiar with how we contract from a construction and non-construction side. On Wednesday, Leanne Sharp from our Lafayette regional office will actually give an overview of some of our data collection platforms, the CRIM stations, and some of the data that we've recently obtained from that. Looking into Thursday, Stu Brown will give a short overview of the master plan with a focus on the data viewer. So one of the online features that allow you to drill down and look at the projects in a different way. And then lastly, Shane Falls will give an overview of something that we haven't talked a lot about in all the 12 years of Industry Day, is our vegetative planting program. Most of the projects we construct in terms of habitat, marsh, barrier islands, or undergo some level of vegetative plantings. Shane will give you an overview of how we may choose the right species and also contract some of that work. Why do we sit here and give these forecasts? Well, the construction peak that we're in is still here, and you can see the next 3 fiscal years of spending. Most of the funds that come into the agency are being dedicated to construction. So 1.74 billion this year, and you see that picture still looks pretty good next couple fiscal years. So that tells you we are starting to deliver some of the projects that were given to us in terms of engineering design and planning from the oil spill funds. And then looking at the project, current active projects, you can see we've got 40 under construction currently, 57 in engineering and design. Many of those are actually slated to move into bidding and construction as we get into the end of the fiscal year. You'll hear about a lot of those today and tomorrow. So that concludes kind of just a quick overview. I'll actually turn it over to Jacques. He's going to give everybody kind of some ground rules. We are facilitating a virtual crowd, so Jacques is going to kind of give everybody a few pointers on how to ask questions and things like that, and that's it. We'll roll right into the project presentations after that. So thank y'all for coming and being here today, and we're looking forward to a great meeting.
All right, thanks, Rudy. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Y'all, I guess just a couple of housekeeping things. We are doing a combined in-person and virtual meeting. So in the event of any questions coming up, I want to ask anyone with any questions in the room to present themselves first. We do have these two microphones here towards the front of the room. You can kind of come in and get up close like this. And as needed, I can repeat the question to those attending virtually. After that, then we'll solicit questions from those in attendance virtually. And what I'm going to ask is that whoever is interested in doing so, you can go ahead and type in your question via chat. And yeah, just tagging along with what Rudy and Brent had said, y'all, it's a big year for our organization, and it really comes down to partnerships like this here amongst us in the industry. And just want to thank y'all all for coming. With that, I'm gonna have Miss Lisa Williams with Louisiana Workforce Commission come up and present on some services which her organization offers.
Good morning. I'm sorry, good afternoon. I've been doing this since morning. So my name is Lisa Williams, and I work for Louisiana Workforce Commission. I am the Coastal Industry Sector Coordinator. And so what I'm here to do is provide a briefing on not only Louisiana Workforce Commission, but the work that we're looking to do around the coastal industry sector. So we want to seek engagement with coastal stakeholders to better understand the coastal workforce challenges and provide solutions for workforce development within the industry. And so what we found is the work is being done, but then there's a disconnect with what the contractors or the projects are needing workforce development wise. And so there are several programs and resources and services that Louisiana Workforce Commission has that we can emphasize for you, as well as strategize as to how to make a working plan going forward. So we have very key partnerships and stakeholders. So CPRA is our partner. We have an MOU with them, and that is to, with the coastal partners and the contractors that are doing the work, we want to make sure that there's compliance with the Louisiana First Hiring Act. In doing that, this is making sure that coastal residents in those areas where this work is being done, they are being able to be afforded opportunities for work. So we want to not just create work, but work that does not displace them, and then that companies or these companies aren't coming over the local coastal zone residents, and that they're not able to take advantage of the economy that's going on around them. So we also are in partnership with Coursera. Coursera is part of our Louisiana Tech Ready initiative. And so we have multiple courses that have been curated for our citizens to take part in. There are virtual classes. So there are some such as construction management, project management. So there are some that directly tie back to coastal, but with our partnership with Coursera, they're willing to curate any type of course that would be helpful in this industry. So we're also meeting with CTAC. And so CTAC has, for the water management side, there are some courses that we would like to see developed. And so we're working with our partner Coursera. These courses are free to Louisiana residents. So any resident of Louisiana can go to LWC's website, click on that, access those courses, and begin to take any of those courses, which can lead to a license or a credential. Also, local American job centers. Those are the places where typically the residents are going to go into. This is where they hear that there's a project going on, there could be some jobs, and then they're going to be, typically they go in there to find job seeker assistance. And so we work with those local American job centers to not just have those jobs available and for them to know about them, but in the triaging of those persons, if those individuals need gap services to assist them in becoming employees of these companies, that can be provided to them. So if they needed to be upskilled because they currently have a skill, but say the license or the credential is old, there are courses that they can take. There are funds that we have that we can put toward them being able to gain those credentials. And then also if they need other supportive services, such as a transportation stipend that would enable them to be able to get to the course that they needed, all of these can be built into what is provided. The local workforce development boards are vital and integral to the work that is being done. These are the boards where the federal funds come. The federal funds come from the United States Department of Labor. It comes to LWC, but then it goes to the local workforce development boards. These are the boards that decide what services, what programs will be afforded to the residents in your area. So if there's a need for a certain program, but they have not been made aware of that, this is where we can come in and say, here's the justification for beginning to offer this program, not just offering this program, but putting the funds behind it so that those that are the very low to low income are able to access these programs and get these skills. Our Louisiana Community Colleges and Technical System programs, we're partners with them. Then the coastal companies and contractors, we do work with them as well. And it's vital that they are in compliance with the Louisiana First Hiring Act, and I'll speak a little bit more on that later. And then, of course, working with our Louisiana coastal zone residents. Again, creating an ecosystem that works for them, that involves them, that's inclusive of them. So the Louisiana First Hiring Act was enacted in 2012, which requires coastal businesses to conduct certain activities to recruit and hire coastal zone residents. So the act basically positions job seekers to apply for jobs relative to CPRA coastal and related projects. And so this helps to make sure that when a contractor comes in, that the individuals that live in that area are not automatically disqualified due to any reason, and that if there is a need for them to be upskilled, then we have the different program services, tools that can be made available to the residents so that the contractors can be in a genuine compliance of it and not a spirit of, we did an initial pass through, we didn't find any skilled workers, and now we're going to go in a different direction. We want there to be true compliance of there being enough qualified applicants for them to work from. So with CPRA, they do have a project hot list. Rudy did talk about there are 40 projects. I had 39, so excuse my missing one on my slide. And then the 8 projects that are upcoming to bid for construction. So in those projects and with those projects that are coming up, there will be information that speaks to the Louisiana Hiring First Act and the role that LWC plays. Our role is to help them gain compliance. They're using our online system that helps them to post jobs, that makes those citizens aware of those openings that those companies do have. The Hire system is an online tool that's available for citizens and employers free of charge. There they can post the jobs, the different types, how many they need, and you can use this for those that are employers and contractors in here. This can become an HR part for you because you can see how many people have applied to those positions, their skill set, if they're actually skilled, the number of people, and then if there is though a lack of qualified applicants, then what can we do to help build a qualified applicant pool for you? And so then that's where on the other side, again, the local workforce development boards are so crucial and vital to being a part of the conversation. So we know some of the hiring challenges are in 2 places, the contractor compliance, where they're actively seeking Louisiana residents beyond the initial project hiring stage. So we don't want that initial pass through. We made an announcement, we had a job posting for 7 days. No one responded or was qualified. And now we're going to bring in crews or project overhead from outside of the Louisiana coastal areas. And so then the other thing is we do realize it is a limited workforce. knowing that we are, again, partnering with Coursera to help upskill or help to train, to give you qualified applicants to choose from, to pull from. In the discussions that are going forth with Coursera, we will be having meetings that'll start in June. And we're asking the different stakeholders to come to the table to tell us, what are you seeing, what's missing? So do you need to see more people with estimation skills or surveyors? What is missing in the coastal ecosystem that we're not able to plug with our Louisiana residents? And so, of course, limited workforce, causing relocation, population shift within the coastal zones. And so we do have industry activities outside of this week. So LWC and CPRA, we do have quarterly meetings. We meet with Greg and Chip and a couple of others. And this helps us to have direction on where we're going. And we have a joint approach as relates to workforce development around the coastal sector. I do host a quarterly coastal industry convening, and this is to find out from the contractors and those that are doing the work in the industry, what's missing? What have we not recognized as an issue? What is it that we could possibly contribute to the conversation, and what could we put toward the efforts we can put toward making it a workforce development productive issue? And then, so the quarterly meetings, the next meeting will be in June. If you signed in on your way in, I'll be able to send you that information, the agenda, all of the information. It goes as this one does as well. It'll be in person, and you can visit by Zoom because we know everybody's not in Baton Rouge. And then this is my contact information on the outside table that you saw established outside. It has information about the hire system, which I did speak about. It gives you the very simple steps of what it is for an employer to go in and actually register on that system free of charge. And then some of the other programs and services that we do provide. We host hiring events, job fairs. So if you wanted to do something in your local community, we can come out, organize, and host that for you to help you get qualified applicants. In doing that, once those applicants have come in, we can then screen them to see what else they might qualify for, what other services they may need to create truly a quality and skilled quality workforce for you. So if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer a few questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lisa. I'm looking in the chat box here too. If anyone wants to say anything there, we're looking, or anyone else in the room.
Thank you.
Hearing none. Thanks for that. And without further ado, we're going to get into the next agenda item, which is our upcoming projects to be bid for construction. We're going to bring Mr. Alex Holston up to start that off.
Good afternoon. This is Alex Holston, and I'm presenting the Breton Landbridge Marsh Creation West project, project number BS 38. So this project is in Bretontown. We've got a map with the project area circled. So it's in Breton Sound in Plaquemines Parish. It's a QIPA project, and our federal sponsor is NOAA. And this BS 38 project is part of a land bridge concept, which includes our other project BS 32, which is going to construction soon, and BS 37, which received construction funding this year. So just an overview of the project, going from the top right corner of the screen to the bottom left, we've got 4 marsh creation areas in the base bid. So MCAs 1, 2, 3, and 4A, and those make up 446 acres. And then on the lake side of MCAs 1, 2, and 4A, we'll have a lake dike feature. And we'll have 12,200 linear feet of that feature. And for the base bid, there's an average pumping distance of about 1 mile from our Grand Lake borrow source nearby just to the west. And then we also have 3 alternates. So MCA's 4B, 5A, and 5B. So those will make up about 189 acres of marsh creation. MCA 5A will have a lake dike on the Grand Lake perimeter, about 1,200 linear feet. And the average pump distance for these cells is about 1.5 miles. So for the containment dikes, MCA 1 will have a crown elevation of plus 3.5 feet. And then the rest of the MCAs will have a crown elevation of plus 4 feet. They'll all have crown widths of 5 feet, side slopes of 4 to 1. The total containment dike length is 27,800 linear feet. They'll all be built with internal borrow. And for the marsh creation area constructed marsh fill elevation, MCA 1 will be built to a plus 2.25 feet. And then the rest of the MCAs will be constructed to a plus 2.75 feet. And as I mentioned, we have that lake dike feature on the Grand Lake and Alligator Pass sides of MCAs 1, 2, and 4. So that's just a enhanced feature, a more robust dike that'll provide a buffer between the wave action that causes erosion on the shore and the marsh we create behind it. And for the lake dikes, the ground elevation will be built to a plus 3. And they'll have a crown width of 40 feet. On the lake side, they'll have a side slope of 5 to 1. And then on the marsh side, it'll be 4 to 1. And for MCAs 1, 2, and 4A, like again, we have a total of 12,200 linear feet. And then for the alternate MCA that has the lake dike, it's a bit of a smaller feature. So we'll build it up to a plus 4, but the crown width will only be 15 feet wide. And again, 1,200 linear feet for that feature. And so for our borrow source, it's about 5 miles southwest of the Delacroix Island community. There's an average mud line of minus 5 feet. And so cutting down to minus 20-foot depth, we'll have a 15-foot cut depth. And the material in the borrow source is primarily layers of lean and fat clays mixed with a silt layer. And there's approximately 4.5 million cubic yards within the borrow area, which covers 194 acres. And so looking at the existing infrastructure, we do cross a couple pipelines. So in the top right of the figure near Delacroix, there's a canal that crosses Bayou Gentilly. There's three pipelines that cross through there, and then a little bit further to the south at the end of Bayou Gentilly, there's another single pipeline that we cross to get to the project. And so this figure shows just a summary of our estimated quantities. So some of the main items, again, we've got about 27,000 linear feet of containment dikes, 12,200 linear feet of lake dikes, and an estimated 1.6 million cubic yards of marsh fill. And then for the alternates, there'll be about 766,000 cubic yards of marsh fill, about 12,000 linear feet of containment dikes, and 1,200 linear feet of lake dike. And then for the schedule, so phase 2 approval occurred in January 2022. We received our construction permit this January. We're anticipating bid advertisement this summer. And the construction duration is 451 days for the base bid, and then 114 days for alternates. And that is all we have. If anybody has any questions. Anything in the
Yeah,
chat?
chat, yeah, in person first, I mean, if he wants to come up. Yeah. We'll see her on there, and move on.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Alex. Next up, we got Mr. Michael Bernard presenting on behalf of the PO 178 project. And y'all mentioned it earlier, if anyone does want to ask questions, feel free to, if you're in the room, feel free to approach and use the microphones if you want. And for anyone attending virtually, feel free to put one in the chat box. In advance with space bar.
Okay. How's it going? I'm Michael Bernard, EI for CPRA. There we go. And so presenting for the Biolucha Ridge Restoration component for PO 178. The original design engineer was Kazi Sadid, which I have recently inherited this project from him. So I'll just be going over, it was presented last year, I think. So I'll just be going over a summary of it and some design changes. But yeah, it's in Pontchartrain Basin in St. Bernard Parish, just right up there. It runs perpendicular to the Mr. Go Canal that was constructed just along, obviously, Biolucha. There's NERDA funding for it, and it's the ridge restoration. So just a brief, just overall project layout of it. Like I said, it runs, found the mouse pointer. It runs along Biolucha on the southern side of it, 5.21 miles. Just over 27,500 linear feet. In 7 different earthen ridge components that I'll explain later. Used to be 5, now split up into 7 due to some waterways that were resurveyed. And the recommended access is coming down the north way of Mr. Go Canal, possibly from a little port about 5 miles up, or not a port, but you know. Some typical sections of it. These are on the Earthen Ridge 1 and 2 sections on the western side of Mr. Go. Just shows how the crest elevation is 5 foot nav 88 with a half-foot tolerance going up with a 15-foot crown width and 5-to-1 slopes on either side. The which was recommended and designed and by the geotechs a few years back with our borrow areas with a 25 minimum foot distance from the toe of the ridge to the start of the cut with a 3-to-1 slopes on the cut in Biolucha to the center of the ridge, or to minus 10 foot is the maximum cut. The first earthen ridge component on the west side of Mr. Go, like I said, is pretty straightforward. The only little hiccup on it is this sonar contact we found in the cultural investigation portion that is recommended to have a 30-meter buffer around it. That is just possible debris, or it said gravel, possibly dumped from a barge. So recommended that we don't borrow from it, but there should be clean off borrow material in the borrow area to construct this little earthen ridge 0.20 and its surrounding parts. And throughout the project, the elevation of which it'll be built upon is around 0.8 to 1.8 feet. So it's really pretty solid ground underneath it, it seems like. The second earthen ridge part, just east of that, still west of Mr. Go, is pretty straightforward. No real complications with that one. Finishes out, there's just the gap between earthen ridge 1 and 2 from a seemingly old access to some oil wells down south of this. So then crossing Mr. Go, we have earthen ridge 3, 4, and 5, which just used to be 3 and 4, and we added a gap right here due to some recent surveys in 2022 that we found was a kind of a deep waterway that we said wouldn't hurt to just cut it right here. It's about a 75-foot gap. And these pipelines cutting across shown here, we're in the process of validating the existence of these. The one going east to west, the last few known documents were a withdrawal permit for its existence. So we'll probably see what happens with that one. And the one going north to south right here was on an older database that we're also in the process of trying to determine if it's there or not, with a potential design change of maybe another just don't touch around where the pipeline is. So we'll see about that. That'll come towards the end of the final design shortly. And Ridge 6 and 7, that also just used to be Ridge 5 in the previous presentation last year, I might have seen. We put another gap right here that now between 6 and 7. That was another one of these navigable waterways, about the same 75 foot, just gap, a couple feet deep, that we determined wasn't worth trying to build material up in there. Some notable quantities, mainly just the earthen ridge at 27,528 feet, and 8 settlement plates each, with temporary grass seeding done immediately after construction on each reach, with additional vegetation planting under contract after construction. So our potential hopeful schedule coming up is our permitting was completed in this past January, with land rights in progress right now is kind of the main factor right now of when we'll be able to really get it rolling for advertisement. So possibly in the late summer, early fall is what we're hoping, with a contract award at the end of this year, and with a contract duration of 285 days, hopefully have it constructed late summer, early fall. So that should be it. Oh, yeah, sorry. Is any questions? Open it up.
Yeah, while we're wrapping up with this one, y'all do want to point out, just seeing some folks taking pictures and whatnot, we are going to make these presentations available. We're actually doing a recording now, and same thing for the partner-led session tomorrow. So they'll be made available via our website. All right, I guess last call for questions, and if not, we're going to get Mr. Thomas McLean up here to talk about the West Fouchon project.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Thomas McLean. I'm a supervisor in the CPRA Engineering Division, and today I have the next 3 projects. So if you're on the Zoom, get comfy. So first is the West Fouchon Marsh Creation Project, TE 134, located just right across Bayou Lafourche from Port Fouchon itself, all the way down there, down in Fouchon, or excuse me, it been presenting this project for a few years now, and we'll kind of get into that. The construction funding was received in January of 2020. This is a CPRA project, and just pretty typical marsh creation. So as you can see here, we have 3 cells up to 802 acres of creation and nourishment. The project was formerly going to dredge off about 7 miles offshore, right next to adjacent to the TE 52 bar area. Over the past couple of years, some things have developed, and we are now dredging Bayou Lafourche, the flotation canals and the slips along the flotation canal, as you can see here in sky blue. That reduces our pump distance down from about 5 to 7 down to 3 to 5 mile average pump distance, depending on where you're at and which cell you're pumping into. Currently, CPRA, NOAA, our federal sponsor, and the Greater Lafourche Port Commission are coordinating to finalize the project and design bid package with this Bayou Lafourche borrow source. We did need to do full surveys, geotechnical sampling and analysis to get to this point, which we have completed. And so at this point, we are moving forward with the Bayou Lafourche borrow option. So as I mentioned, there's up to 3 MCAs. MCA 1 and 2 will be the base bid work. At this time, we are trying to determine if we're going to include the additional MCA at the very north end of the project area. But MCA 1 itself is about 330 acres, fairly shallow, minus 0.63 bottom elevation. We'll be pumping that MCA 1 up to a plus 1.75 with a plus or minus quarter foot tolerance for approximately a little over 1 million cubic yards. MCA 2, a little bit smaller at a little over 200 acres, even shallower than MCA 1 actually at minus 0.21 feet. Believe it or not, we'll actually be pumping that one a little bit higher just due to the geotech on that to a plus 2.25 with a quarter foot plus or minus tolerance, and about 600,000 cubic yards going into there. And then the additional MCA is 206 acres in its entirety. There is a chance we could split that up into a smaller section or go semi-confined with a smaller footprint on there. But at this time, we are currently planning to a plus 1.75 with a upper and a lower quarter foot tolerance and a little under 600,000 yards for that one as well to do the entirety of it. But like as I said, we are still looking into the final layout of that. Getting into the containment dikes, MCA 1 and 2 will both be fully confined, roughly 18,000 linear feet of containment dike to be built for each one of those. Crown elevations vary from +3 to +3.5 with a half-foot upper tolerance. Everything at this point is planned to be internal borrow. Yeah, as I mentioned with the additional MCA, we are looking into potentially even going with a semi-confined or unconfined route for placing material up there. We are at this time planning for some gapping and degrading after acceptance of the marsh creation areas prior to demobilization. But other than that, fairly standard containment dike layout we have there. So getting into the Bayou Lafourche borrow area. So Bayou Lafourche is a Corps of Engineers maintained navigation channel. It is currently, or it was authorized to a minus 25 feet elevation with 2.5 to 3 feet of advanced maintenance allowed. It has recently been authorized to a minus 30 foot bottom elevation with an additional 3 feet of advanced maintenance. And so that is where this project comes in with the Bayou Lafourche borrow. We will actually be dredging most of Bayou Lafourche and flotation canal to that new minus 33. The Bayou Lafourche is kind of always changing with storms and maintenance dredging. So it's kind of always a moving target on exactly how much is in there, which is why we expanded the borrow to include both the flotation canal and the slips off of that. As you would imagine, with some of the dredging being more maintenance based, you'll have, lighter, fluffier material. And we also have, that 6 feet or so of new cut material. So it'll be pumping a little bit of everything on here: sands, clays, mix of sand, clay, silt, you name it. We'll probably come across it with this borrow layout. As far as existing infrastructure within the marsh creation areas, there's actually none technically within the MCAs. We were able to cut those out early in design. But as you can see, bisecting the MCAs are 2 16-inch Connecticut natural gas lines. Here in red, they do have full spoil banks on both sides of them. So then equipment access and dredge pipe access, it should not be a huge deal. And then you have a 6-inch Kinder Morgan that's plugged, abandoned, and backfilled. The port has been over the years using their maintenance dredging to backfill that canal. But as you can see, we're just west of it with our containment dike layout. So hopefully shouldn't be an issue there. As far as the infrastructure within Bayou Lafourche itself, there are multiple pipelines crossing Bayou Lafourche. At this time, there are no plans to relocate any of the pipelines. We're dredging Bayou Lafourche as a borrow area. We are not doing a core deepening project by any means. And so at this time, we're currently planning for excavation buffers around each one of these existing infrastructure locations. And so that's how we'll be addressing that. As far as quantities for this project go, pretty small, number of bid items. I won't read them all to you, but, we are finalizing the volumes now that we've changed over our original design borrow source. So we are finalizing those numbers currently. I would not expect any more than a plus or minus 10% change from what you see here today. It is a pay on the cut job in the channel itself. We are trying to find out if, since we won't be coming from offshore with the dredge pipe, if we need to do any nesting bird abatement, and we will update all this prior to bid, of course. Just going through the schedule, I mentioned we received our funding in 2020, but we kind of took a step back to do a project redesign to take advantage of the sediment sources, right next to Bayou Lafourche. We did receive all of our permits and 408 compliance from the Corps this spring. We have finished our relook at the new borrow area. And so at this time, we are finalizing the bid package. We're hoping to have that finalized by the end of this year with a late 2023 or early 24 bid. We will actually not be handling the bidding on this project. This project will be let by the Greater Lafourche Port Commission. And right now we're looking at approximately 375-day contract window. So I'll go ahead and open it up to questions before I start on the next one.
All right, got one. All right, I see one from the chat here. I'm gonna read it aloud. All right, from Bill Hanson, when you mentioned pipelines in the work area, can you tell us if the pipelines have been located based on original drawings, as built, or locations confirmed by probing or other on-site testing? And Thomas can answer that one.
So it's a combination of databases, magnetometer surveys, and physical probing.
Good deal. Thanks, Mr. Hanson. I guess anyone else, either in the room or virtually, before Thomas moves on to the next one, which is the Terrebonne Basin Ridge and Marsh Creation Project. Last call.
You mentioned that the channel.
So let me repeat real quick. I'm not sure of the gentleman's name, but he had a question about the designed depth of the borrow channel within Bayou Lafourche, right?
So you are correct. It is not a navigation dredging job where you need to clear template. With regard to regional sediment management, though, for multiple restoration projects, we will probably have something in the specifications to maximize dredging template, as much as reasonable. I don't know where I'll move that. So I'll go ahead and get into the TE 139 Terrebonne Basin Ridge and Marsh Creation Project. So this is actually one of our big NERDA projects. It is in Madison Bay down in Terrebonne Parish near Chauvin and Dulac, and this is Marsh and Ridge. There's a project overview. It's a pretty ambitious project. We're looking at over 1,400 acres of marsh creation and nourishment, a little over 10 miles of historic ridge restoration, and within the base bid, approximately 9,000 feet of articulated concrete block mat, which we'll get into a little bit later. This is a mixed sediment borrow source. Okay. Inshore, due east of the project area, it is a very large borrow area. We've identified about 35 million cubic yards of available material within those borrows, and with an average pump distance of 2 to 4 miles for MCAs 2 through 6. MCA 1 is way up in the north. It is about an 8-mile pump distance right now. Getting into access, so all of Bayou Terrebonne is accessible. We do have some access dredging areas located they're not shown here. It's not a whole lot of access dredging, but we will allow down to a -8 max. You know, to be temporarily side cast and backfilled upon completion. Into the MCAs, as I mentioned, there's 6 MCAs kind of spread out over the 10 miles of the ridge here. So just kind of going through MCA, just through the typical sections. There's a couple of MCAs that will have multiple lifts scheduled for them. They're all MCAs are fully confined, interior ballroom. As you can see, they all will utilize the ridge as the western bound of the of containment, and then with in situ earth containment dikes built on the other 3 sides. So anywhere the earthen ridge has marsh next to it, it'll be a 20-foot crown width. And you can see here a couple just going through all of the MCAs with ridge and without ridge. And then you can see there is one reach of ridge between MCA 1 and MCA 2 that will actually have a 60-foot crown width. So it will be a very large ridge. And you can see in the drawing itself, we are looking at the possibility of armoring that with concrete block mats, potentially as an additive alternative, but we are still finalizing that. And so as big of a project as this has a equally large estimated quantities. So everything's broken out by ridge segment, by marsh gradation, fill area. But to give you the big picture numbers, we're looking at about 9 million cubic yards of fill material, about 66,000 linear feet of containment dike, about 10 miles of ridge, and 9,000 feet of articulated concrete block mat. And as I mentioned, we are looking up to another 2 miles or so of concrete block mat via additive alternative on that section of ridge only, where it's 60 feet in width. As far as a schedule overview, as I mentioned, this is a NERDA project. Our permitting is complete. Our land rights and servitude agreements are in progress, but we are getting towards the end of it. We are hoping to advertise by the end of this year. As I mentioned, land rights is on the critical path right now. And we are looking a little over 800-day construction contract duration. So I'll go ahead and open it up to questions on this one.
What's the number on that? The number, your, and project number.
TE
139.
139.
You want to read that?
Yeah, those of y'all on Zoom, Mr. Rick Smith is asking about the project number for the project. Yeah, if anyone else in the room would like to ask any questions, feel free to come up and talk into the mic. It's like we've got one from Mr. Simnick, Mr. and Mrs. Simnick. Is there a time sequence between lifts?
There is, I do apologize. I do not remember it off the top of my head, but we can definitely get you an answer to that.
One comment here, and Thomas very eloquently put that the land rights is on the critical path. This project's been presented, I think it's the 3rd year, if I'm not mistaken. We're not struggling technically with any component of this project. The design package has come along quite well. Our consultant has performed quite well. Team as well. We do have, I think, one of the major landowners holding out for signature, and that has been for like 7 years. So we hope that this will resolve by the 4th quarter, as Thomas mentioned. But I did want to note that we struggled with this process for quite a while. And hopefully this year. Welcome to the meeting, Chairman Bond.
Yeah, I'm just trying to turn up the microphone. I don't know if they hear you back.
Everybody can hear me back there? Good deal. So we'll go ahead and get into the last project. I'm actually not the project engineer for this. Stephen Cook, who is out of town today, is the engineer record for this. So I made a deal with him and told me make a presentation, I'll present it for you. So this is the East Delacroix Marsh Creation and Terracing Project, BS 37. Be a quick project overview. There's a Quipper project down in Delacroix and St. Bernard Parish. NOAA is our federal sponsor on this project, and we're looking at about 414 acres of marsh creation and nourishment with a little under 20,000 linear feet of terracing. And about 2.6 million cubic yards for cut volume on the marsh fill. Looking at the borrow source is in Lake Leary to the west of the project area. We're looking at a roughly 6 mile dredge pipeline pump distance. Originally, we had looked at crossing the Highway 300, but after looking into it, it would have been a lot more expensive, a lot less cost effective than just taking a long way down Bayou Terrebonne. So we'll be born from Lake Leary, coming into Bayou Leary and then into Bayou Terrebonne and coming down into the south of our project before we come back up. There is an existing pump station in the project area. As you can see, the marsh creation areas are split down here. That is the location of the pump station. So we split those cells to maintain free flow for the pump station out there. And there is an existing tidal levee for the Delacroix community that we'll actually be utilizing as containment on the eastern side. Excuse me, the western side. And we will have multiple navigation crossings with this dredge pipeline corridor that we'll get into in a little bit later. So as I mentioned, the bar area is in Lake Leary. Average mud line right now of about -5, so looking 5 to 6 feet of draft. At this time, we are not anticipating any access dredging being required or needed on this project. Our bar area design elevation is -20, so you're looking at approximately a 15 feet foot cut. Majority fat clay from our geotechnical analysis, and as you can see, we have one avoidance area from our investigations, and we do have multiple gas pipelines in the area that we will need to float the dredge pipe over. Bar area itself has been split up already into a primary and secondary, again, to maximize our use of available sediment within the area for as many projects as we can. So you will need to clear template on the primary bar area before the secondary bar area will be allowed. Containment dikes, as I mentioned, we'll be utilizing the existing tidal levees for backside containment. Fortunately, the parish is actually down there doing some maintenance on their levees, and so we're able to coordinate with them. So we're hopeful that there won't be any work that needs to be done on the parish levees, and we can just tie into them with earthen containment dikes. In situ borrow at this time, pretty standard containment dike template, about 15,000 linear feet. And again, we will be planning for gapping and degrading after acceptance of marsh creation areas. And we're looking at a plus 3.25 foot constructed marsh fill elevation with plus or minus quarter foot tolerance. Getting into the terraces, there are two main terrace features: the sediment retention terrace that will be built off of MCA1, as you can see in the top right corner here. And so that will have a pretty similar geometry to our earthen containment dikes. The borrow will be on the, to the east of the terrace feature itself, with a 10-foot crown width versus a 5-foot crown width, and slightly flatter side slopes. About 4,000 linear feet on that feature. And then the terrace field itself, again, a little wider than our containment dikes, but pretty similar template, about 15,000 feet in total. Each terrace is 500 linear feet with approximately 250 feet spacing center line to the next terrace. So there will be borrow on both sides of the terrace, and with the spacing laid out, there will be multiple borrow channels potentially between terraces. Getting into our quantities, about 2.6 million yards of dredge fill material, a little under 3 miles of earthen containment dikes, little under 20,000 linear feet of earthen terraces, 8 settlement plates, and there are up to 2 abandoned pipelines that will need to be removed. They are in various stages of decay and rust. So one of the lines is, it's just multiple pieces that our surveyor found. The other, we do have some documentation of is, it is abandoned, and at this time, we are planning to remove it. As far as schedule goes, we received our construction funding this past January from the CPRA task force. Our construction permit was submitted in March of this year. I believe we actually just received our OCM permit last week, but we're still waiting on our core permit. We are hoping to bid this late summer, and we expect a construction contract duration of roughly 550 days. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up to questions. The question was this summer of this year? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. That is correct. Summer of 24. After the third project, they all start to run together.
All right, question from the same attendee earlier. Any permitted booster locations?
Yes, I do believe we permitted some locations. I believe we have a corridor within Bayou Terrebuff that will allow for booster placement within there, and I believe we have a couple of areas in Lake Leary and Bayou Leary that we've delineated corridors in the construction permit.
All right, thank you, Thomas. Next up, we got Mr. Adam Linson presenting on the BA 217 project.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Linson. I'm one of the engineering supervisors in the engineering division. Today, I'm going to be presenting 2 projects to you. The first one is the Grand Bayou Ridge and Marsh Restoration Project, BA 217. So just to give a little project background, this project is located in Plaquemines Parish in the Barataria Basin, so on the west side of the river, near Lake Hermitage and south of the town of Magnolia. It's also located adjacent to the BA 240 project that's shown over here to the west of the BA 217 project area. And that project is currently under construction. So like the BA 240 project, this is also a Mississippi River borrow source project. We will be borrowing out of the Magnolia acreage rather than the Point Celeste acreage that BA 240 is utilizing. This is a CPRA project sponsored by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it was approved for construction funding in December of last year. So this just shows an overview of the permitted project quantities, and then I'll get into the actual scope of the project as it currently stands. So as I mentioned, we plan to borrow from the Magnolia Anchorage borrow area, which is shown over on the right side of the screen between river mile 45 and 47. It's about 200 acres in size and contains just a little under 7 million cubic yards of borrow material. The permitted features include 3 total marsh creation areas, totaling about 440 acres of marsh creation and requiring about 3.3 million cubic yards of fill. Additionally, there's about 21,000 linear feet of urban containment around the marsh creation areas, in addition to about 12,000 linear feet of urban ridge fronting Grand Bayou. Just some additional notes. A portion of this dredge pipe corridor is the same as what was permitted for the BA 240 project. That comes down from the river all the way to the intersection of Grand Bayou and Jefferson Canal, which is towards the center of the screen here. Additionally, the Magnolia Anchorage has been previously permitted for BA 240, but as I mentioned, is not being utilized to construct that project. So this is the layout of the project features as it currently stands. We have 3 total marsh creation areas, 2 of them included in the base bid of the project, and 1 as an alternate marsh creation area. It can be up to about 330 acres, including the alternate, but the base bid portion of the project is about 260 acres. In total, the base bid will require about 2 million cubic yards of fill, or about 2.5 million cubic yards, including the alternate marsh creation area. There's a total of about 15,000 linear feet of earthen containment dike, getting close to 19,000 if you include the alternate marsh creation area in the bottom right portion of the screen. In total, there's about 8,700 linear feet of earthen ridge along Grand Bayou, and that good number goes up to about 11,000 if you include the additional marsh creation area. So there's, after permitting the Magnolia Anchorage Bar area, which I'll show on the next screen, we did have to exclude some areas due to existing utilities and obstructions in the river, bringing that total down closer to 6.3 million cubic yards. So this is the typical sections of the containment dike in the Marshville. All the marsh creation areas will be constructed with containment dikes to an elevation of +3.5 feet with a 1/2 foot upper tolerance, a 5-foot crown width, and 4-on-1 side slopes. Those will be used to contain a Marshville elevation maximum of 2.5 feet with a 1/2 foot lower tolerance on the Marshville. The average mud lines in those areas for all three are roughly about -2 feet. Moving on to the earthen ridge. The ridge feature of this project is supposed to be constructed in 2 separate lifts. The first lift would be with in situ material from an internal bar area on the marsh creation area side versus on the Grand Bayou side. For a couple of different reasons, we did do some geotech analysis in Grand Bayou and found that those materials were not ideal for constructing an earthen ridge. And additionally, the nearby Grand Bayou Native American community has requested no access or no dredging within Grand Bayou. So that spawned this 2-lift ridge construction. The second lift would be constructed using material borrowed from the Mississippi River. That's also going to be used to construct the marsh. So the ridge feature includes 7-on-1 side slopes on the Grand Bayou side and 5-on-1 slopes on the interior. This is the layout of the bar area, the Magnolia Anchorage bar area again. You can see towards the center of the splits the bar area into 2 pieces. And additionally, in the bottom right portion of the bar area, there is an obstruction that was discovered during the magnetometer surveys that we have accounted for in the delineation bar area. So it's a 90-foot cut, maximum cut elevation, and standard offsets from the core from the MRNT levee, and a 1,200-foot offset from the navigation side of the river, the right side of 1,200 feet. The materials in the bar area consist predominantly of silty sand materials. And in this configuration, there's about 6.3 million cubic yards of material available, and there's about a 2.5 million cubic yard fill requirement. So this is just an overview of the dredge pipeline corridor coming from Magnolia, heading up upstream from the river, crossing over near the Port Alhash siphons and back down to the project area. The pump distance ranges from about 4 miles from the bar area to marsh creation area 1 to about 6 miles to marsh creation area 3. There are a couple of permitted booster pump locations. The one I'm going to reference is the one in the river. The pump distance from that point is about 4 miles from the booster pump in the river to MCA 3. You can see listed on the left side, there's several utility crossings for this project. There's about 6 pipelines in the river that will require floating over. There's also the crossing of where the Plaquemines Parish Ferry is located. And then that includes as well the MRNT crossing and the NOV crossings. As you move down Grand Bayou, there are a handful of additional pipelines in there as well that will require either floating or constructing a temporary sand bridge over the top of those pipelines. And last, this is the equipment access corridor layout. It's the same as the BA 240 project has utilized. It comes west from Barataria Waterway, about 15 miles to the west. At this time, we don't anticipate any access dredging based on what we've learned on the BA 240 project, and including some permanent spoil placement for access dredging in several of those reaches. This is a summary of the bid quantities broken up into the base bid and the alternate bid item. I won't read through line by line for you, but as I mentioned, there's about 15,500 linear feet of containment dike, 8,500 feet of bridge, and just under 2 million cubic yards for the base bid. And this is a pay on the fill project from the Mississippi River. Including the alternate bid 1, that adds about 2,000 linear feet of earthen containment, about 2,500 feet of earthen ridge, and brings the total fill quantity up to about 2.7 million cubic yards. The project schedule, we were approved through CPRA for construction funding in December of last year and also submitted our permit during that same time. We anticipate to receive our construction permit somewhere in the end of July timeframe, and hope to advertise around August for a hopeful construction start somewhere at the very end of this year. And with that, I will take any questions on VA 217. Okay. I'll move on to the next project, seeing no questions. The next project I'm going to present is the Bayou Cane Marsh Creation Project, PO 181. This is another CPRA funded project with US Fish as the federal sponsor. This one is located in St. Tammany Parish on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, as you can see in the figure on the right. As adjacent to two previously constructed CPRA projects, the PO 33 Goose Point project and the PO 104 Bayou Bonapauca projects, both to the east of the proposed project area. Like those two projects, it is a Lake Pontchartrain Borrow project, and it was approved under CPRA, as I mentioned, in December of last year. So this project spans a total of 7 marsh creation areas across the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, totaling approximately 630 acres, requiring just under 3 million cubic yards of fill. For all 7 of those marsh creation areas, there's a lot of containment to construct all those areas. It's about 62,000 linear feet of earthing containment, so roughly 11 miles of containment on this project. The borrow material, as I mentioned, will come from Lake Pontchartrain in the area shown on the figure. There's roughly about 15.5 million cubic yards of material available in that borrow area. One thing to note that I'll kind of get in a little bit more in the coming slides is that there is shallow Pleistocene in the borrow area, as was the case with the other nearby projects. It varies from about 5 to 10 feet below the surface. For this project, we also do have some permit restrictions in terms of equipment access and dredge pipeline corridor placement. As such, we do have 3 permitted locations that we're allowed to cross to get into these marsh creation areas. And I'll get into further detail with those as well, but you can kind of see them shown on the figure here. So I know this is probably very hard to see, but there's 2 different typical sections for our containment and marsh fill. All of our marsh creation areas, except for marsh creation area 6, have a crown elevation of up to 4.5 feet with a 1/2 foot lower tolerance, whereas MCA 6 is up to 5.5 feet with a 1/2 foot lower tolerance. All the containment dikes will have 5 foot crown width and 3 on one side slopes across all marsh creation areas. This will be used to contain our fill elevation of plus 2.5 feet with a 1/2 foot lower tolerance on all areas except for MCA 6, which is plus 2.5 feet with a 1/2 foot lower tolerance. The average mudline elevation for these areas is about -1 to -1.5 feet for all areas except for MCA 4 and 6, which are the deeper of the 2 areas, and those are closer to -1.5 to -2 feet. So moving on to the borrow area, this is the plan view and typical section of the Lake Pontchartrain borrow source. The average water bottom elevation is about -11 feet. So we don't anticipate the need for any access dredging to access this borrow area. It's located about 1 to 1.5 miles from the shoreline, depending on how you look at it. And we're currently proposing a 15-foot cut for this borrow area, which gives us a total available quantity of about 15.5 million cubic yards. And again, just as a reminder, we're looking at about 3 million cubic yards of fill. So there's some flexibility on the use of this borrow area. Materials in the borrow area are predominantly firm to stiff, fat, and lean clays, with some sand pockets in the upper 10 or so feet. Below that, you start to encounter the stiff Pleistocene materials and the occasional thin sand layers. So we do anticipate on this project the potential for clay balling, as was seen on the Bayou Bonapauca and Goose Point projects. We did take a look back at the lab data for those and kind of compared the 2. It's probably very difficult to see up there, but our project basically on a scale of looking at liquidity index of the available borrow materials, we're somewhere in the range between what happened on Bonapauca and what happened on the Goose Point project. So we do anticipate some clay balling to occur with the borrow area, so it's project. And then last, this is the dredge pipeline and equipment access corridor layout. For the most part, these two features do overlap, except for the portion of the equipment access corridor between Marsh Creation Area 3 and 4 over here. No dredge pipeline corridor here, only equipment access corridor. The average pump distance to these areas ranges from 1.5 miles to MCA 3 all the way up to 4 miles for MCA 7 all the way down in the bottom right of that picture. On average, the pump distance is about 2.5 miles to each Marsh Creation area. As I mentioned earlier, we do have some restrictions on dredge pipe and equipment flotation near the shoreline. As part of our permit requirements, we are being asked to float all equipment and dredge pipe within 500 feet of the shoreline to minimize any impacts to the existing grass beds in the area. Additionally, we have been permitted 3 50-foot wide shoreline crossings of the Lake Pontchartrain shoreline, which will be crossed using board mats to help facilitate equipment and dredge pipe into the Marsh Creation areas. Between the rest of the areas, flotation access only without any dredging is allowed. I would like to point out too that there are a lot of existing tidal creeks and major waterways by Cane that run through the area. As part of our permit requirements, again, we are not allowed to use those for equipment access, as well as at the request of the National Wildlife Refuge. And so this is a table of the summary of all of the project quantities. I'll really just focus in again on the total fill quantities. Pay on the fill project, or sorry, pay on the cut project is about 3 million cubic yards for all 7 Marsh Creation areas. And here's the current project schedule. Like 217, we got authorized for construction funding through CPRA at the end of last year. Submitted our permit in January of this year. Due to some environmental consultations that this project has to go through, we don't anticipate a construction permit sometime until probably late spring, early summer of next year. So advertisement looking like summertime of 2024. With that, I'll take any questions on the Bayou Cane project.
Mentioned that transportation of different restrictions, but you can't do some way with their ideal way to bring your equipment in, you guys kind of figured out.
So just to repeat the question, that's Crispin, right? The question had to do with our design specifying a preferred equipment access route or potential equipment access route, right?
Don't work.
So is this in reference to the 500 feet buffer along the shoreline? Yes, so as part of the environmental consultations, we've been made aware that there's existing grass beds they prefer to keep intact as much as possible. So working with them, we've kind of delineated 3 areas where we're allowed to kind of look through without and still try and minimize impacts as much as possible. So we've delineated a few areas that they understand there could be potential impacts.
You mentioned about sport equipment, like kind of come in a certain area.
Yes, so there's the question was about using existing tidal creeks and waterways to access the project site. At the request of the refuge, they've asked that we not use those existing tidal creeks on their property. And Bayou Cane is actually a scenic waterway. So we have decided not to pursue using or getting a special use permit to access through there.
Just looking here, seeing nothing so far. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the questions. Anyone in the chat? Before we turn it over to the final project update, which is a really long agenda item, but it is pertaining to the Maurepas Swamp and West Shore Lake Pontchartrain Reach 6 project. Matt Melton's gonna present on that one. Yeah, here now, we're gonna go ahead and get into it.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Milton. I'm an engineer within the CPRA Engineering Division. And I'm going to talk about the river reintroduction into Maurepas Swamp and West Shore Lake Pontchartrain flood reduction risk project Reach 6 Phase 1. So the project is not quite as long as the title. So kind of the project overview here. This is the again, this is the Marpaw Swamp Reintroduction and West Shore Lake Pontchartrain Combined Project. This kind of is the overview of the whole project with this window being, so you can see here, the diversion starts at the river. Oh, I got the thing here. And then moves all the way out here past I-10 into the swamp. So it'll be a 2,000 CFS diversion and a hurricane risk reduction levee built, in tandem. So there's 6 design reaches that will eventually be constructed under multiple construction contracts. The project, our project is located in St. John the Baptist Parish. And then you can see here, this is part of the larger West Shore Lake Pontchartrain levee system that the Corps of Engineers is building. And so what this project is this is specifically about Reach 6 Phase 1, which is a clearing and dredging project that will begin to establish this portion here you can see in the northern part, which is the conveyance channel for the diversion between Hope Canal and Airline Highway US 61. So kind of here's a more zoomed in project overview of just this project alone. So you can see here, it starts just a little bit north of Airline Highway. It's hard to see on here. Just north of Airline Highway, there'll be an access road, and then there'll be clearing and excavation of the channel all the way to just south of the Interstate 10 crossing. So kind of the main items of work here that we're looking at, there will be traffic control and coordination to establish this entrance, here at US 61, which is the only access point for the project. There'll be a construction of the entrance and truck washdown racks, erosion controls. The main items will be clearing and grubbing of the corridor, demolition of some existing structures within the corridor, and then finally the dredging of the channel and spoil placement. And then some very important constraints is we have a 300-foot right-of-way, which is also our environmentally clear zone. So we have 300 foot to work within to construct the channel and place the fill. There's a pipeline crossing, utility crossing you can see here. That has been designated as a no work zone. So that will have to be floated across, or the contractor will have to get agreements with the pipelines to cross there with equipment. And then finally, at all times during the project, Hope Canal is a drainage canal that drains, areas to the south. So it will have to be maintained drainage at all times. It has to remain open. So then kind of getting into each feature, one by one, we have here is the entrance from the project. So you'll have a US 61, there'll be a traffic control plan. You'll establish temporary signs. There's going to be a closure. There's currently a crossover here of the median in US 61 that will be closed to prevent any trucks from trying to turn, left into the entrance. And then obviously there'll be a lot of coordination with LADOTD. And then just a caveat, we're still applying for the DOT access permit. So this is subject to change based on those permits. And then moving on. So we have the truck washdown racks. There'll be a washdown rack for trucks exiting to prevent, mud and everything from getting onto the highway. This will also include construction of a 2-foot widening of the shoulder here to make an exit ramp for that, installation of a culvert, and then a asphalt apron to the edge of the DOT right away. And again, final design of this will be based on the DOTD permit requirements. So kind of getting into the real features. So we have the 300-foot corridor. The first part of this will be a clearing and grubbing. After you construct the access, this is currently, heavily wooded area. So there will be a lot of trees to clear, and then also some underbrush. And this will all be cleared and removed from the site. And so you can see here, you have the existing Hope Canal and then the areas that will be cleared on either side. And then so the demolition, there is an existing camp structure at station 27450. This camp will be removed in its entirety. All materials will become property of the contractor to be disposed of, at a approved landfill. Any piles located within what will be the future conveyance channel will have to be removed. Any piles outside of the footprint can be just cut off below the mud line and left in place. And then obviously there'll be some demolition of the US 61 shoulder to build that 2-foot widening that I talked about. And then finally, there is a crim station within the footprint of the project. So the crim station equipment will be removed, and then the boardwalk and what other structures are left behind will also be removed. And then so getting into the dredge material placement. So this will be mechanically dredging Hope Canal again to construct a portion of the final conveyance channel for the diversion. So dredge materials will be placed on either side of the canal in the dredge material placement areas. And this is currently planned to be done in 2 passes. So the first pass, the contractor, you'll be able to excavate the first template and place material on either side up to a +2 elevation. And then the second pass will be deepening the template and allow material to be placed up to a +6. The reason for the 2 passes is simply to allow time for the material on either side of the dredgement placement area to consolidate, to increase in strength and allow for higher, stacking material higher. So again, there will be a 30-day minimum hold period between placement. So it doesn't mean you have to go from one end to the other. It just means if they finish placing material, the next pass can't start until 30 days after that material has been in place, right? To allow for that consolidation. So then finally, and then obviously all dredge material has to be contained within 300-foot project. You can't allow any material to go outside the project. So there'll probably be, that may require construction of some temporary berms just to prevent material from flowing out into the swamp. And then finally, in that no work area where the pipeline crossing is, there'll be no dredging, no material placement in that area. And then, so here's kind of showing those templates. You can see you have the existing project, the existing Hope Canal. The first pass, we'll dig it out at about a 30-foot wide bottom with 1 to 4 slopes. You'll have this placement area here where material can be placed up to about +2. Current ground line is, around 0. Your water levels in the swamp vary from about 1/2 foot to 1.5 foot. And then the second pass you can see here, we'll dig out the second half of the template. It's still 30 foot, 1 to 4. Your max bottom elevation will be about 8 feet, which is the final elevation of the channel. And then you'll have higher spool placements on either side of the canal. So then kind of getting into the summary of estimated quantities, kind of the main ones to look at is, about 36,000 linear feet of silt fence. And then about 100 acre, a little over almost 110 acres of clearing. And then finally, about 250,000 cubic yards of excavation. And I think, so then anticipated bid advertisement is summer 2023. And the current estimated construction duration is 630 days. And that includes from beginning to end. So, and I think that's my last slide. So, huh?
I'm just looking at the chat.
Yeah, anybody, if there's any questions?
Good job.
No?
Y'all appreciate it. We're pretty close to time. We did have another agenda item for any other general questions and discussion. Don't want to hold anybody up too much from the festivities involving crawfish. If you got anything, feel free to speak up.
Well, thank everyone. First and foremost, thank Jacques Boudreau for all the hard work you put in to kind of keeping this show on track. We are right on schedule. I think that's the first time in 12 years. So kudos to that. Thanks to the project team, the CPRA project team. A lot of hard work went into these presentations in terms of the work within the presentations, the engineering, the permitting, the project management. Particularly kudos to the engineering division staff. A lot of the projects you saw up today were designed in-house by our staff. A lot of hard work goes into that. A lot of lessons learned from past projects being applied. A lot of advice and input from these past meetings have gone into those designs. I know, Rick, you've been here since probably the first one. You can probably see some of that translating today. So I think that concludes. Brandon, you got any Any wisdom for us? Let's go eat. All right. That concludes the program, and appreciate everybody for turning up, and all those on Zoom, will be concluding.
Go ahead.
All right, that's it.
Yes, just, there's one question there from Mr. Phillip. Will this be posted? Yeah, this is gonna be all made available, all the weeks, activities we have for Coastal Industry Week will be available via our website. Feel free to reach out to any of us here in engineering for it. Thank y'all very much. Go ahead and conclude.